Welcome to the 2023 Candidates Forum sponsored by Wallingford Community Women in conjunction with the Wallingford Government Media. I'm Jean McFarland, the program moderator. This segment features 6 of the 11 candidates running for Board of Education. The format will be as follows. The first part of the program will consist of questions asked of the candidates by 2 reporters from the Record Journal. They are Nicole Zappone, Wallingford reporter, and Crystal Elcano, reporter of the Latino Communities Reporting Lab. We also have a student from Sheehan High School, Supriya Sarkar. This will be a round-robin type format where each of the candidates will answer a question. Candidates will then have the opportunity to make a comment on a question they were not asked, if they so desire. The second part will allow each candidate to make a closing statement. During the question and answer portion of the program, each candidate will have 2 minutes to respond to a question and 1 minute for the follow-up commentary. After the question and answer period, each candidate will have 2 minutes to make closing remarks. Before beginning the questioning, I'd like to introduce 6 of the candidates running for Board of Education. They are Rajin Daring, Republican; Benjamin Highland, Democrat; Jennifer Passaretti, Republican; Maureen Reed, Democrat; Donna Regan, Republican; and Melanie Versace, Democrat. Nicole Zappone, would you please ask Mr. Daring the first question?
Sure. It's on the topic of consolidation. Do you support plans to consolidate the 2 high schools? If the schools are consolidated onto the Lyman Hall property, how would you like to see Sheehan High School property used in the future?
Could you speak a little bit closer to the microphone?
Sorry.
That's okay.
Do you want me to repeat it?
Yes, please.
Okay. Do you support plans to consolidate the 2 high schools? If the schools are consolidated onto the Lyman Hall property, how would you like to see Sheehan High School property used in the future?
Thank you for the question, Ms. Zappone. To answer the first part of your question, yes, I do support the consolidation. I understand that this is a difficult issue that the Board of Education has spent a lot of time studying during my 2 years on the Board of Education. And I would be very excited to see all of our resources going to all of our students. By having all of our students in one building, it will open up a lot of opportunities that do not exist currently. For example, there could be certain classes that are offered because there is enough demand from our town population as a whole to take the class, when there is not enough demand from either school individually. The same could be said about sports teams and athletics. Additionally, from a financial perspective, if we only have one building to maintain, that could free up some room in our budget to redirect money that was previously going to facilities to going to something that more directly impacts students. To answer the second part of your question, as to future uses of the property that is currently used for Sheehan, that topic is yet to be studied and is not a determination to be made by the Board of Education. However, I could brainstorm several possible uses as to what could be beneficial to the school district. We have currently some other properties that could be moved into that building. For example, moving the central office building there, as we are currently paying rent for that. Although, as I stated, that is yet to be studied and is not a decision that will be made by the Board of Education, and therefore I do not wish to sway that decision by commenting prematurely. Thank you.
Supriya Sarkar, would you please ask the next question of Benjamin Highland?
Good evening. Recently, there has been a lot of commotion based on the proposal of 2 high schools, as was mentioned previously. How do you feel about Sheehan and Lyman Hall combining, and how do you think local households will respond to this new combinations of high schools, especially considering that tradition is a huge part of Wallingford?
Thank you, Supriya. So when we talk about the community and how it's going to impact individual households, it can be several different things. One thing that I hear quite often is on one side of the town versus the other, there's going to be a property value situation going on, because if you have a consolidation on one side of town versus the other, it can sway, what the value of those homes are going to be. So that's a large discussion that I'm having at the doors quite often. When we're talking about, though, perhaps a personal concern as far as what the students are going to feel, going from one side of town to the other, and are we going to lose those rivalries and all of that kind of commotion with the town? At the doors, normally what I'm hearing is that's not actually as large of a concern as it seems, because the town can come together, being in one facility, and can create a whole different harmony in the town. Currently, we do have a fairly split town, which is causing this east-west side, which does that rivalry, which creates a lot of fun and entertainment. But at the same time, it doesn't necessarily facilitate a real combination of the community and making Wallingford as one whole. So from an individual standpoint at a household, it's going to be a personal decision, and how they feel about it, I can't really answer. But from the community that I've talked to, from the doors that I've knocked, people are not necessarily as worried as I think was initially perceived, that it's about those rivalries and that kind of concept. It's more, I'm finding, about taxpayer concerns, and taxpayer concerns are going to be relieved by a consolidation of the schools, more likely than it will with the continuation of two schools, because there is quite a large cost and burden with continuing with two schools. So I think more than anything, it becomes a property value concern from an individual household perspective.
Thank you.
Crystal Eliscano, would you please ask the next question of Jennifer Passaretti?
Are you concerned about any potential transportation issues related to the consolidation of the two high schools?
Thank you for the question. Thank you for being here. So obviously we have concerns. We listen to the constituents, and that's a concern of theirs. So it needs to be a concern of ours. If I was living on the other side of the district, of course, by putting my high schooler on a bus, I would be concerned about how long they're going to be staying on the bus. So that's something we're looking at. If we weren't concerned about it, we wouldn't be looking at it. And we're having an open dialogue with our bus company. We're having an open dialogue with our central office, with the people who schedule the transportation for our students. So, yes, we're looking at it. We're concerned about it. We want to make sure that that is addressed before we move forward with consolidating the high schools, right? I know that what was put on the table was to have the one high school at Lyman Hall. So for the people that live at Lyman, around the Lyman Hall area, that's beneficial. For the people that live in the Sheehan area, I definitely appreciate their concerns. It's the one thing that we debated the most was the location. And if I'm being honest, we're here to be honest, right? It's the one thing that gave me pause was the location, because of the transportation. So yes, it's a concern. It's the thing that we're looking at the most. It's the one thing that I'm looking at the most. And I hope in the whenever we resolve this, I don't know, it could be next year, it could be 5 years from now. I'm hoping those are the questions that we'll be able to get good answers to.
Nicole Zapponi, would you please ask the next question of Maureen Reed?
Sorry about that. All right, so the next question is the renovation of schools. This is for Maureen. Hello.
Hello, how are you?
Do you support plans to renovate the two middle schools, Dag and Moran? How would you address the overall maintenance needs of the school district? I can repeat that if you need that.
One more.
Yeah? Okay. Do you support plans to renovate the two middle schools, Dag and Moran? How would you address the overall maintenance needs of the school district?
Hello, thank you. So yes, of course I would support renovating the two middle schools. I was was not on the committee that actually visited the schools, but my understanding from some of those representatives is that the middle schools need a lot of work. And I think it's just important that we actually put our thought process into action and start putting money into the buildings. It seems like it just keeps being prolonged. So yes, I support that. And as far as maintaining the schools, I think what's really important with that is maintaining anything, as all of us know, comes down to money. And I think it's really important that the Board of Education budget is supported by the town council and the mayor moving forward. We need places for our kids to go where they feel comfortable in a warm environment that is conducive to them learning. And while I think we have that, we need to work on that. These buildings are very old, and I think we need to continue to look at how to maintain them. But again, that really comes down to needing funds to do that. And if we're going to put money into our future generations, then now's the time to start doing it.
Thank you.
Supriya Sarkar, would you please ask the next question of Donna Regan?
So the Board of Education has spent a lot of time trying to improve standardized test scores across their public schools. If you were elected into the position at the Board of Education, what specific changes will you institute to improve our academic experience at school?
Thank you for attending this evening and being a volunteer to ask these questions. I thank you, the Wallingford community women as well, and the press. So standardized test scores, we have a lot of conversation about this. In fact, we just went over some of the data from the Wallingford public school system just at our last instructional meeting, where we started to review those test scores and how we are doing overall. What I would caveat is that test scores are a moment in time. They are just one snapshot of how a student performs on a particular day. And so to base how they're performing based on just one test score or a set of test scores, I think is difficult. And how do we gauge whether or not they are doing, how well they are doing? What we were presented with is not only the test scores, but a comparison. How well did they do against the test scores from the previous year or from the previous time it was given? How much improvement have they made? Where are the trends that we're seeing? So I think it's more about what are the trends that we're seeing and how can we support that? We work very closely with the central office to make sure that new programs, reading programs and support systems are all in place, not just for the teachers, but for the students, because this is a community effort. And so I think gauging student success just on standardized test scores is unfair. And I do think it is better to take a look at how they're doing overall in their measured improvement.
Thank you.
Crystal Eliscano, would you please ask the next question of Melanie Rosacci?
How would you address the ongoing teacher shortage, especially for STEM teachers, special education teachers, language teachers, substitute teachers, and bilingual teachers?
So I think the teacher shortage is obviously a statewide problem. It's not specific to Wallingford, and there is lots of incentives that different school systems have been trying for teachers across all areas of education. And for substitute teachers, I know it's been a topic of conversation that Wallingford's pay is a little bit lower than some of the surrounding towns. So I think that's one of the things that can be looked at. Strong mentorship programs for teachers. It's whatever is set up to support new teachers or existing teachers once they're in the education system is something that's extremely important. So if you have new teachers coming in, how are you acclimating them to the school system? How are you supporting them and mentoring them? That's really important. I don't think there's any magic bullet to solve the teacher shortage problem. I think it's how do we engage students earlier, encourage people to become teachers is really important. Engaging at the high school level is really important. Trying to encourage teaching, it's one of the most important professions. So it's how do we how do we recruit, how do we retain, all of that is really important and needs to be looked at across the board.
Supriya Sarkar, would you please ask the next question of Rajan Daring?
So a few weeks back, Wallingford had made headlines in the Connecticut Insider due to immense heat waves and sudden closings of schools. How do you wish to address climate change in schools, and do you have any plans of implementing climate education?
Thank you for the question, Ms. Sarkar. So it sounds like this is a two-part question. First, asking about our facilities, and second, asking about our curriculum. In regards to our facilities, this certainly is a pressing matter. I think we all know the science. We all know the directions that things are heading. We all know this is going to continue to be an issue that continues to face us going forward. School facilities is very important to me on the Board of Education. The district currently has a consultant who we are working with to determine a long-range plan of our district's needs in terms of facilities. That way we could plan from there. Certainly, I will also mention the one high school consolidation again, that being in one building that we're building from the ground up will give us the opportunity to address any building issue with that facility further. Second, in regards to curriculum needs to be very relevant to issues that we are facing today. We were recently going through, and I know this isn't directly related to your question, but we were recently going through some mathematics curriculum, and I commented during the instructional committee meeting that I loved how hands-on it was, how real life it was. As we continue to work on our curriculum, I look forward to continuing to see the different proposals that are brought before us and continuing to see what we could do to make curriculum more real and more relevant to our students. Thank you.
Crystal Eliscano, would you please ask the next question of Benjamin Highland?
A recent state law required all high schools to provide an elective for Black and Latino studies. Do you agree with the need for this in the curriculum?
Thank you. Thank you, Crystal. Yes, I do. I think we need as diverse education as possible. I grew up in New York in a very diverse community, and New York very much pushed at that time a whole section of our curriculum that was about diversity. Growing up, it felt almost oppressive how much we were being taught about it. But now that I get to reflect upon it, I realize that that education really set a foundation for me when I went into college and when I went into the working field, that I already knew more about a variety of cultures than a lot of other people I attended school with in college, and then also went on to the working field. Because when you grow up past the educational system, you're going to have that foundation in educational diversity for different types of communities, because otherwise you're not going to be able to interact proficiently, effectively, and it's going to really stunt your growth in anything outside of school. So I very much believe that we need to do as much as we possibly can to diversify what those studies are. We do have a fairly, I'll say a whitewash history in this world, and it's unfair. I do not feel that it very much shows the history of this country, the world in general. We do need to expand that reach and make sure that we are including all communities. It doesn't matter where they're coming from, who they are, sexes, races, it doesn't matter. Everything should be included, discussed, and educated on. Because the more we do educate on it, it will be better for the society, but it'll be better for those children on a fundamental level when they're at school. Because if you know more about the culture of the person sitting next to you, then you have a better understanding of when they're having a concern or an issue. So the empathy goes through the roof. You're going to have these students understanding each other in a way that they can't if they're not educated on what other cultures are.
Thank you. Nicole, would you please ask the next question of Jennifer Passaretti?
A study done by the National School Boards Association reveals that all students, especially Black and Latino students, benefit when they have access to teachers of color. To what extent should the Wallingford School District focus their efforts on recruiting teachers and school administrators of color?
Thank you for the question. So I think we already do that. We already have an eye toward making sure that, when we are hiring administrators and teachers, although, and did you ask about teachers or administrators?
Both.
Both, okay. So the Board of Education, we actually don't do the hiring for teachers. The administrators do that, but the Board of Ed is involved with hiring anyone in the administration. But to your point, so I think students and families, students especially, they thrive when they feel like they belong. And it's so important for our students to feel like they belong and that they are heard. And I think that the best way to do that is to see people that they are around reflecting their own values and their cultures. And I think that whether, it doesn't matter what the particular demographic, we want to hire more teachers that students can relate to, that students feel like they're being heard. And you know, we've already been doing that. We actually have a diversity and inclusion committee, and one of the initiatives of this committee is to make sure that we're doing our due diligence and meeting those needs and hiring with that in mind. So I'm not sure if I answered your question, but that's what I got for you.
Thank you.
Supriya, would you please ask the next question of Maureen Reed?
This is a question from the community of Wallingford. So how will we attract and retain quality educators in our school district?
So I'm probably going to mirror some of the comments that were already made in regards to this topic. But I think it's very important. It is not just statewide, but a national issue right now, trying to move people into the field of education. So I think one thing is to make sure we have programs in our schools, our high school level, where we're involving students in like cadet teaching or some sort of kind of initiative into a teaching program, having them actually get hands-on experience by not only having that curriculum, but going to elementary schools, middle schools, even maybe within the high school, doing different things where they get the real experience hands-on of teaching. Another thing that we need to continue to do is educate our students on the opportunities that they have beyond high school, because that's a good portion of really trying to guide students based on what their strengths are on the different assessments they take, career assessments meaning. So if we see the kind of that promise in someone and that interest, then we need to guide them into maybe looking into that as a career, going into college for that. I also think that we need to continue to use interns as much as we can from the colleges around the state. And again, that pool is kind of dried up too, because we don't have many people going into the career currently. But continue to use that as much as we can, reach out to colleges and try to have some of those students in our schools, so that high school students, middle school students can see that as an option for them in the future. So, thank you.
Nicole, would you please ask the next question of Melanie Risacci?
Sure.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, I missed on. Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. Crystal, would you please ask the next question of Donna Regan?
Yes.
Thank you.
Do you support armed security officers in the schools as an alternative to school resource officers?
Thank you. So I'm sure that most people are aware that we now have AROs, which are Armed Resource Officers, in our high schools and in our middle schools. This was an initiative that we did over the summer. Central office worked very closely with the town of Wallingford Police Department to make sure that we have those officers in our school. It is a reality of the world today, and safety is paramount when it comes to our students, and we want to make sure that we do provide safety. And so, yes, I support it, but I also support our fostering of the relationship. This isn't just about an armed security presence in the building. This is about fostering a community and a relationship with these officers. And so these officers are now dedicated to each one of the 4 schools. They do not rotate, they do not go to a different school, they cannot be pulled out of that school. They are hired specifically for each of those schools. And so they have the opportunity to build a rapport and build a relationship with the students and really foster a good community, a safe community where students can feel comfortable about coming to school and knowing that they are safe. So yes, as I said, I do support the armed officers, but I do support it more in the way that of the community and that it provides and the relationships that they're building within the halls of those schools.
Nicole, would you please ask the next question of Melanie Rusacci?
Sure. There has been a recent decline in test scores. Is this a concern, and what would you do to address the issue?
So obviously, test scores are just one aspect of how we judge student success. The test scores across the state are still struggling to increase post-pandemic. And this is something that is really going to end up being a collaborative effort. Of course, it's a concern because it's how school systems are judged. And sometimes you have to figure out if that's how school systems are judged, how do we make sure the kids are successful on the tests? But that's not the only important thing. It's how are they going to be successful when they're out into the world and moving on to the next level. So test scores are absolutely, definitely a concern. I don't think that there's, you know, an answer that anyone knows. I think that it's a very complicated issue. Even tied into it is chronic absenteeism, which since COVID has happened, chronic absenteeism has tripled. It is about 20% statewide. So when you can't get kids in school, you also can't help them to learn to be able to take the tests. So it's really is going to be a collaborative effort and working with parents to figure out why maybe students are disengaged from school. What are some of the social issues that may be happening? There's actually many, many factors that go into test scores, and that it's something that will have to be addressed collectively and collaboratively.
Thank you.
Crystal, would you please ask the next question of Regian?
Would you support increasing teacher salaries and benefits in order to address the teacher shortages?
Thank you for the question, Ms. Eliscano. As was stated previously, the teacher shortage is not an issue that is unique to Wallingford, but rather is a larger issue across our state and our country. Our teachers are certainly the most valuable asset that we have in our district. Our teachers go above and beyond to support our students, and it is very important that we invest in our teachers in all ways. The school climate that a teacher faces when they enter the building, the type of mentorship that a teacher has available to them, the type of training and professional development that they have throughout their career. In terms of specific questions such as salary, unfortunately, I do not feel that I can provide you an answer at this moment, as any budget question needs to be taken in the context of everything that is going on at the time. We will be starting our next budget season soon, and I look forward to seeing what the needs are of our district at that time. That way we could see how any request, any opportunity to invest more in something could fit in at that point. Thank you.
Nicole, would you please ask the next question of Benjamin Highland?
Sure. According to Public School Review, the teacher-to-student ratio for high school, middle school, and elementary school is 12:1. Do you agree or disagree with this number? If not, how would you address this issue?
So, thank you, Nicole, for the question. As I was saying before, you know, I grew up in a town that was a large town, so I went to a school of about 1,600 kids for the high school. And the ratio at that time was probably sitting right around, I would say, 1 to 20. We had class sizes going into the 30s. I do not necessarily find larger classes an issue, provided that the teachers are set up correctly to handle that sort of situation. And not every class dictates a size like that. So there are certain types of classes that can be more of that lecture style, which you can actually have a far wonkier proportion, but there's also individualized attention that does need to be had for certain parts of the curriculum. So due to that, I don't necessarily think the specific ratio is as much my concern. It's more about the individual courses and what is something that makes sense for those courses. And we need as many teachers as we can to facilitate as many courses as we can. And there are going to be times where there's going to be an unbalance where you have a class that is only running with 15 and a class that's running with 25. But as long as we've prepared the teachers properly and we've supplied them supplementary staff when they need it, I think it's successful to have even a higher ratio potentially, but I would prefer a reasonable ratio. I think somewhere in that 15 to 20 zone tends to be very reasonable for a typical class. There are, of course, special education needs. That's going to be a very different sort of ratio setup, but that's a different question entirely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So Priya, would you please ask the next question of Jennifer Passaretti?
Will you participate in the application of state funds for HVAC systems for Wallingford Public Schools?
You have to say that one more time for me.
Sorry, this is a question from the community.
Okay.
Will you participate in the application of state funds for HVAC systems for Wallingford Public Schools?
Will I participate in HVAC fines?
Funds.
To look for state, is it state grants for?
Yeah.
For
Oh, state funds.
Funds, sorry.
Oh, okay, all right. Thank you, all right. I thought, wow, we're fining schools for HVAC violations. All right, well, maybe we can do that. I work at the University of New Haven, and I spent the first 18 years in the biology department. So I taught biology, I worked in the labs. In the last 2 years, I made the move to the grants and contracts office. So I now work as a grants and contracts accountant, which is very different from biology, but I still get to work with people who are doing the research and supporting them on the post-award side. So I do have a background in post-award, so after you get the grants. Obviously, if I'm making my living benefiting from grants, I'm all about grants. And if we can subsidize some of the necessary things that we need to do in our schools and we use state grants, I'm obviously all for that. There's some things that we have to put in place. I know there was a lot on social media and the newspaper about why we didn't do the HVAC grants last year. And people were upset because I think you had a question earlier that said, hey, it was really hot in the schools, and how come we don't have air conditioning, right? I've got 30 seconds. Yes, I'm in favor of doing the grants. Yes, I'm willing to do whatever we have to do. There are some things that we need in order to apply for these grants. And at the time last year, we didn't have those things in place. It was a short timeline. I wish we had all of our ducks in a row. We were only given like 2 months to apply for this grant, and we didn't have all the necessary things in place. So I wish that were the case. I'm over time. I wish that were the case, but going forward, I would absolutely love to pursue that.
Thank you.
Crystal, would you please ask the next question of Maureen Reed?
Do you agree with plans to move the adult education program out of the old train station? Where should the program be housed?
So I think we need to find a good place for the adult education program. Currently, I know there's quite a debate going on about the train station, the old train station in Wallingford. I think that it's very important that we find a place that will house the entire program and a place that is definitely a good environment for learning. I don't know, as far as the alternate plans for the train station, I'm not quite sure on all the politics that are involved with that, and businesses moving in, and I'm not running for town council, but as Board of Ed, I think it's really important, as I said, that if if the program needs to be moved, and even if given now the environment in the old train station is not appropriate for learning, then we need to find a place where that is appropriate. I mean, we have other school buildings in the district. There are probably other town buildings that we could look into, but it is very important that they receive as good of an environment to learn in as our students K through 12.
Nicole, would you please ask the next question of Donna Regan?
Sure. Increasing mental health needs of students post-pandemic has been well documented. How would you prioritize the district's response to this issue?
Thank you. So I think there's no debate about the mental health crisis that is currently going on from all the way down to our elementary, straight up through our high schools. And it's not just the students. I think we have staff, tons of mental health needs. And so as a board, we are supporting our central office in their needs and making sure that we are providing the services, not to just our students, but to our staff, to make sure that they can get the care and provide the support that our students need. And so I know that we are always looking at this and making sure that the health and welfare of our students is first and foremost on our minds. And so we make sure that we hire the staff and make sure that we have the counselors and the support staff that are needed in each of the schools, and that we are taking a look at the mental health. We just did a behavioral study, a survey, I believe, for the high school and for the middle school, and that gave us some trends that we know that we have to look at. So it's a complex issue, and we know we have to keep on it and make sure that we're addressing it as those situations come up. So I don't think there's a one way for us to solve the issue. I do think that we just have to continue to support our central office and all the schools and the counselors to make sure that we're providing the best care possible and alternate ways for our students and our teachers to receive the mental care or the mental support, mental health support that they need.
Thank you.
Supriya, would you please ask the last question of Melanie Risacci?
This is also a question from the Wallingford community. So what specific experience do you have working with large budgets that makes you the ideal candidate?
So my experience I have working with budgets, I happen to be the executive director of a large mental health clinic in New Haven. And so I have a $20 million budget, which isn't large in comparison to the school budget, but it is a large budget that has multifaceted programs where we're constantly having to balance budgets from and funding from many different sources. We have federal funding, state funding, private foundation funding, philanthropy. And so we're constantly trying to figure out and assess what the needs are and then balance that against what dollars we have coming in. So I think that my experience in budgeting related to where I work is very applicable to the budgeting that needs to be done for the school system. It's the same thing. You're looking at what are your available resources, you're looking to identify where are your gaps, and you're looking to figure out how to best spend your dollars and making sure that you actually have voice from teachers, from administrators, and from the public to figure out what really are the needs. I think sometimes when we're decision makers, we forget to ask the consumers and we forget to ask the people that are receiving the services what are the things that they really need, and that should be an important part of the budget process as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. We now are offering the candidates an opportunity for 1 minute to make comments on questions that they may not have had or that they want to further expand upon. And we'll start with, excuse me, Rajan Daring.
Thank you. I am going to speak a little further about one of the questions that was asked of Ms. Passaretti. in regards to transportation to the Lyman Hall side of town for students that currently live on the Sheehan side of town. I live right by the Cheshire border. I live fairly far from the Lyman Hall property, and I know that it is a concern to students and to families about possibly needing to take longer bus rides. However, I would encourage our town to look at the positives that could come of this as well. Certainly, I have heard a lot of people mention this to me as a concern, but I encourage us to look at the issue as a whole, to evaluate the pros and the cons. And in my mind, as I have already said during this candidates forum, the advantages educationally will significantly outweigh the disadvantages. I also want to encourage our students to not view these long bus rides as wasted time. When I was a student in the school district.
Benjamin Highland.
Thank you. Without having the full list of questions in front of me, it's hard to remember all of them. But the one that I'll touch upon real quick is the school resource officers. So from my perspective, I think there is definitely a need for increased school security. We've seen that over the past many years. That is a troubling issue that's going on. I just think that it needs to be evaluated in deeper context to really figure out what is the benefit of the particular types of officers that we're putting in and what their relationship to the community is, which I know that's exactly what was discussed before, is that it's not just about having police in school, it's about that community engagement with the police and the schools. So I think that relationship needs to be fostered in a way that it is beneficial to the students more than it is for our own mental security, because that's really what it acts as right now, and it doesn't actually act as a conduit for these students to learn about how to engage with the police within their own community.
Jennifer Passaretti.
Thank you. So this is less of a rebuttal and just kind of a couple comments. We're talking a lot about test scores. Everyone's worried about our test scores. The thing that I want everyone to understand is that, just like Donna Regan said, it's a blip in the 12 months of these young people. I want everyone to realize that we also study the students' growth, and we've got our lovely people from a central office in the back, so I know this was part of their presentation. Hello back there. So we want to concentrate on a student's growth, not just their test scores. And P.S. Am I out? Okay. So universities are relying less and less on these standardized test scores. So I think it's time that we stop looking at what the test scores are, and are our students growing? Let's compare them to themselves. Where were they last year? Where are they now? That's so much more important to me than what grades are getting. Oh, I'm overtime. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Maureen Reed.
Yes, I'd like to comment on the mental health question, although I don't remember the details of it. I just want to make sure that we are truly putting still a lot of effort into this in our school system. We need to make sure we have, we do, but continue to have and support programs to improve mental health for all students, so kind of a base education for all students. In addition to that, specific supports for struggling learners. And I think we also have to keep in mind our faculty, all of the people, all the adults that work, all of the educators and adults that work with our children, because they too have gone through the concerns out of COVID. So remembering that, because they're our direct line to our students. So how are we supporting everybody in the district? And also trying to make connections with outside places, because it's very hard for families today to find the supports they need for kids. And so trying to make those direct connections.
Thank you. Donna Regan.
Yes, I want to speak briefly to the question about adult ed and moving of that. I just want to give praise to our adult education director, Dr. Anthony Benefico, who has grown the program by 100% since last year. Co-oping, we now have co-op agreements with both Berlin and with Cheshire, so our program continues to grow. And so for me, if we're looking to move that, the program, there are things that we have to consider, and that is it going to continue to grow? Is it going to be in a central location, where they can access a bus line or some transportation. We need to make sure that we take into consideration the needs of these students that are accessing this program. And so yes, I would love to see that in a new building that is bigger, actually, as long as it's still within reach of our students.
Melanie Rosacci.
I'm going to take the opportunity to speak about the school consolidation. I have been pretty vocal and solidly a two smaller school model advocate. And I really feel that there will be a reduction of opportunity for students, leadership opportunities, captainships, scholarship, changing class rank. School safety experts talk most about what really makes an environment safe for schools, and it has nothing to do with metal detectors or armed guards or school resource officers. What it has to do with is small settings. That is the single most deterrent for school safety. And mental health is really important, and we need to make sure students are connected. And with a rise in chronic absenteeism, that is also really important. And I think it is a gift that we have two smaller high schools. And I think that we should really fight to keep that.
Thank you. That includes the question and commentary portion of the program. Each candidate will now have 2 minutes to make a closing statement. Regine Daring, would you please start?
Thank you to the Wallingford community women for making tonight's event possible. I am a lifelong resident of this town. I started my educational journey in Wallingford in preschool, and then I graduated from Sheehan in 2018. On a side note, when I was a student in the school district, I always used my bus rides to get homework done, and therefore I would encourage any students in our school district concerned about bus rides to not view it as wasted time. I then continued to live in Wallingford while attending Quinnipiac University to study economics and public relations, and where I am still enrolled in the law school. I have found it incredibly rewarding to give back to our town on the Board of Education. I have watched a lot of growth in our school district over the past 2 years. As we came out of the pandemic, as we found a new bus provider, and as we saw our adult education program develop relationships with other towns for further opportunities to collaborate. As a board member, I have enjoyed being involved in many aspects of the school district, such as the Parent-Teacher Advisory Committee, the committee that worked on the school breakfast program, union negotiations, and administrator interviews. I have also enjoyed being an active member of our town as a whole, including being the administrative director of Glow Food Pantry in town, being on the board at the YMCA and the United Way, writing for the Wallingford magazine, volunteering with the Coalition for a Better Wallingford, and being the food trucks coordinator for the Jubilee 350 parade. I hope to have your vote on November 7th. If you have any questions for me at any time, please feel free to reach out to me via email, deeringforboard@gmail.com. Find me on social media @deeringforboard, or by calling or texting 203-208-8534. Thank you.
Benjamin Highland.
Thank you. Thank you to the moderator. Thank you to all of our people asking the questions and for everyone that came tonight. For me, this would be my first time on the board, first time holding a position in Wallingford. A little bit of background on me real quick. Like I said, I grew up in New York. I was very involved in the education system growing up. I have a severely autistic sister, and my mother also worked for the federal government in the education department. So I spent my whole life, seeped into education and really learning as much as I could about it. And oftentimes I fought that as a kid. And growing up, I've realized more and more my knowledge and ability is responsibility at a certain point to go in and advocate for the things that I believe in for my own child. I do have a son in the Wallingford school system, just started, and I'm looking to better everything for him, but not just him. It's also about bettering things for the community as a whole. The fundamental thing that I look at that's not just the educational standpoint, not just the students, but it's also the taxpayer concerns. I am a taxpayer, just as all of you sitting here are. And I want to make sure that we are utilizing our money the best we possibly can for the students and for those overall educational objectives. There has been some mismanagement in the past, and there's going to be a whole regime change for every single section of Wallingford government. So because of that, we're going to have a very different outlook come January 1st, and I want to be a part of seeing what I can do to help better that community. I do have a fiscal background. I'm currently a financial advisor, and I've been in the business field for over 10 years. So I'm very business savvy, and I've dealt with large sums of money, not as large as the Board of Education, but I can most certainly, analyze and be analytical about how our funds are being utilized to best benefit our taxpayers and our town and our children.
Jennifer Passaretti.
Thank you, and thank you to everyone that came tonight and was involved in the organization of this. Listen, if I had it my way, all 11 of us would be on the Board of Ed. There's no shortage of work. There is a lot of work to do on the Board of Ed, and I wish all 11 of us could be on there. Everyone here, they've all been endorsed by their party. They're all qualified. They have a passion for education. They're intelligent. They love Wallingford, which is the most important part, right? So it's not Burger King. I can't have it my way. I can't have all 11 of us on. And it's just not possible. It's not the reason why we're here tonight. We're here tonight because we can only get 9 on. And so my job is to try to be one of the people, one of the 9 that gets elected. So I want to continue being on the Board of Education. I served 1 term. I loved it. And I would like to continue doing that. There are 3 primary subcommittees on the Board of Education. I was the chairperson for 2 of them. I worked really hard, and I'm willing to work hard again. If you ask anyone who has ever been on the Board of Ed, they will tell you how huge a time commitment this is. I am willing to put in the time and willing to put in all those long hours, going through budget worksheets, being at meetings till 11 o'clock at night, because in the end, it's not about running for an office, running for office or running for a position. It's about serving this town. This is the town. Wallingford is the place where I call home, and I want to do that for Wallingford. So I don't have enough time. I would love another hour to talk because I'm a chatterbox. So I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram. Please follow me. I had an interview with Citizen Mike, the Citizen Mike show, a couple weeks ago. I would encourage everyone to watch it. Thank you.
Thank you. Maureen Reed.
First of all, thank you very much for giving us this opportunity tonight to everyone who's been involved. I'm a graduate of Shan High School. My 4 children went through the school system, 2 from Shan, 1 from Lyman Hall, 1 from Wilcox. So I run the gamut of understanding the different needs and skills of children. I've been an educator for over 25 years in another district, so I have the experience. I stay up on the legislation. I understand the initiatives being brought forward, which I think gives me a real mindset to understand what we need to do in this district. I think some of the key aspects of being up here, it's kind of it's a dual role that we play. One is to support our educators, which I want to thank everybody who works with our children in this district. Central office works hard to try to make everything that will, make it a good experience for our children. The teachers, the lunch people, the bus driver, everybody who works with our children, thank you. The other part of my role, so part is to support all of them, but the other part is to hear what the community thinks that our district needs. We are 9 representatives of this whole community, and it's important for us to listen, which I think I do well, and also to come forward with thoughtful questions to make sure that we're doing everything we need to provide the best education for our children. So I hope that you, consider re-electing me. I would really like another chance to serve. I've been on the board for about a year now. It certainly is not enough time to really delve in and do everything that I just said would be the role of a member. So thank you very much.
Donna Regan.
Thank you, and thank you once again to everyone who participated this evening, and to the Wallingford Community Women for setting this up. I've been a resident of Wallingford now for over 20 years. I do consider this my hometown, even though I was not born and raised here, because I raised my family here. I've put 3 children through the Wallingford Public School systems, and I was an advocate for each and every single one of them. And I will now continue that as an advocate for every student in the Wallingford Public School system, especially those in the underrepresented populations. Each student has a unique learning style, and I think Wallingford needs to focus on how do we encourage that, and how do we teach so that these students can learn in their own unique ways. And so I think that's what the focus should be. I do not think that we should be focused on a single issue when it comes to who do you choose for your Board of Education. I think all 11 candidates are very capable, and I do think that we are a team of 9 on the current board, and we've been together now, with the exception of Maureen, who's only been here for a year, for the last 2 years, and I don't think that's enough time for us to really get things done. Many of us were new to our term and 2 years ago, and I want to continue to help with that. I want to continue to learn, and I want to continue to facilitate change. I am the chair of the Operations Committee, so I've been knee-deep in the budget cycle, and I am looking forward once again to that process. And so I ask the town of Wallingford for once again to support me in my re-election bid to the Board of Education. Thank you.
Melanie Rosacci.
Thank you. I also want to echo the thanks for this opportunity. As a first-time candidate, it is great to have the opportunity to answer questions from students and press and the public. So I decided to run for the Board of Education because I really was very active in the school community in general through PTO and through PTAC, but also just coming to Board of Education meetings, being very interested in what's going on with our facilities and in various issues that are a part of what goes on with the kids and the schools in Wallingford. So I decided that it was time to step up and really be able to work hard to be a representative of the people, to try to bring transparency and bring more openness to the process to the public. Because the Board of Education is here to represent the people. That's what the 9 representatives are for. I would really like to advocate for a mental health and wellness subcommittee. We talked about various subcommittees that are here, but since post-pandemic, the suicide rates in teens have doubled, and we really need to have a concentrated effort on what goes on in the schools. So I would really be advocating for a mental health and wellness subcommittee. I have a Facebook page that people can follow me on. I'm very accessible, always open to talking to people. One of my favorite things has been going around and talking to people and knocking on doors and really hearing what people have to say and hear what they want to do, and they want to have a voice in the education of their children. I've lived here for 40 years. I've had 3 kids that have gone through various schools in Wallingford. I love Wallingford. My kids will be graduated. My youngest is a sophomore, but my background is in social work, and I care about the community. Schools are the center of our community, and I am very vested in making sure that the schools are top-notch in Wallingford.
Thank you. This concludes part 1 of the 2023 Board of Education Candidates Forum. On behalf of the Wallingford Community Women, I thank you for watching, and I remind you to please vote.